Every god that has ever been worshipped was warning you about the same one thing. The Christian God, the Islamic God, the Hindu pantheon, the Buddha, the Jewish God of Sinai, the Norse gods, the Egyptian Maat, the Greek Olympus, the Yoruba Orishas, the Aztec sun, the Taoist way. None of them ever met. They never spoke to each other. They were separated by oceans, by millennia, by languages no one else knew. And every single one of them issued a warning about the same one thing. Different words. Same warning. The checkpoint has read the texts. The checkpoint will name the warning before the end of this video. And the part that will not let you stop watching is this. The thing every God warned you about, the single behavior every theology converged on, is the thing you almost certainly did this morning before your feet touched the floor. Not because you are a bad person, because the modern world has built a perfect machine for breaking the one warning every God ever issued. The checkpoint will inspect each tradition. Before the first tradition is named, one thing has to be said clearly. Comparative religion is one of the older fields of human study. It has been done seriously since at least the 19th century, and informally for thousands of years before that. Every serious comparative scholar, from Max Muller to Mircea Eliade to Karen Armstrong, has noticed the same thing. The world's major theologies disagree about almost everything. They disagree about the number of gods, the nature of the afterlife, the role of suffering, the source of authority, the proper rituals, the meaning of history, the structure of the cosmos, the path to salvation. They almost never converge, except on one warning. Every tradition, in different words, with different metaphors, in different centuries, names the same single failure as the one most likely to ruin a human life. The checkpoint will tell you what the warning is at the end. First, the inspection. Most people never notice this. Tradition 1, the Hebrew Bible. The 10 Commandments given on Sinai roughly 3,000 years ago are arranged in a specific order. The first two are not, as most people assume, prohibitions on murder or theft. They are warnings against idolatry. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image. The Hebrew word for the central failure is avodah zarah, strange worship. The checkpoint will tell you what the prophets actually meant. They were not warning the Israelites about statues. The Israelites had no shortage of awareness about statues. They were warning about something more dangerous. They were warning about the human tendency to take a smaller thing and place it in the seat reserved for a larger thing, and then to organize an entire life around the smaller thing as if it were the larger one. Strange worship is the practice of giving ultimate weight to something that cannot bear ultimate weight. The cargo, a life slowly bent around an object, an image, a story, a person, a system that was never designed to be at the center. Hold this in mind. The checkpoint will return to it. Tradition 2, the Quranic tradition. In Islamic theology, the single most serious sin is named with one short word: shirk. Shirk means association, the act of associating anything with God in the seat that should be God's alone. The Quran is unambiguous. Every other failure is, in principle, forgivable. Shirk is the one the tradition treats as the failure that, if held to the very end, cannot be undone. The Checkpoint has read the classical commentaries. They are remarkably consistent on what shirk actually is in practice. It is not primarily the worship of literal idols. It is the practice of placing any created thing, wealth, status, another person, a self-image, a system, a fear, in the seat that should be reserved for the ultimate. The cargo, a life secretly organized around a partner god. The person would never name as a god. Different language. Same warning as Sinai. Tradition 3. The Hindu philosophical tradition. In the Upanishads, written in India between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE, the central diagnosis of human suffering is given with two words, avidya and maya. Avidya means not seeing, the failure to see what is actually real. Maya means the veil, the covering layer of appearance that the unawakened mind mistakes for the underlying reality. The Checkpoint will tell you what the Hindu sages were pointing at. They were not saying that the world is unreal in a literal sense. They were saying that the human tendency is to take the surface, the role, the body, the name, the social position, the changing forms, and treat it as the entire self. The cargo, a life lived as a costume mistaken for a person. Same warning, different metaphor. Tradition 4. The Buddhist tradition. The Buddha, around the 5th century BCE, named the single root cause of human suffering with one Pali word, tanha. Translators have rendered it as thirst, craving, attachment. None of the translations quite catch what the word actually means. Tanha is the act of grasping a passing thing as if it could permanently fill the hole that asked for it. The Checkpoint will tell you what the Buddha was pointing at. He was not warning against desire as such. He was warning against the specific move of placing the weight of permanent satisfaction on a thing that, by its nature, cannot hold permanent satisfaction. The cargo, a life spent grasping at impermanent things while quietly believing that the next one, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next achievement will finally hold. Same warning. The grasping is the strange worship. The grasped thing is the partner god. Tradition 5. The Greek tragic tradition. The single most consistent warning across Greek tragedy and the Olympian theology underneath it is given with one word, hubris. Hubris is usually translated as pride, but the translation is too small. Hubris, in the Greek sense, is the act of forgetting your own scale and assuming that the small mortal self can occupy a position the cosmos has reserved for something larger. Every Greek tragic hero, Oedipus, Agamemnon, Prometheus, Achilles, falls because of the same move. The hero takes a position that was not his to take. The gods, who in Greek tragedy are usually less moral than mathematical, simply restore the proportion. The Checkpoint will tell you what the Greeks were warning about. They were warning against the central human move of placing the small self in a seat that the small self cannot hold and being slowly destroyed by the mismatch. Same warning. The seat is the same seat. The wrong occupant is the same wrong occupant. Tradition 6. The ancient Egyptian theology. At the center of Egyptian religion for almost 3,000 years was the goddess Maat, the personification of cosmic order, balance, truth, and right relation. Egyptian theology held that every human action was being weighed against the principle of Maat, and that at death, the heart of the deceased would be weighed against the feather of Maat in the hall of judgment. The checkpoint will tell you what the Egyptians were actually warning about. The failure of Maat, the heart heavier than the feather, was, almost universally in the funerary texts, the result of the same move. The deceased had taken something for themselves that was not theirs to take. They had occupied a seat in the order of things that disturbed the balance. The cargo, a life that took up more space, more weight, more sensuality than the cosmic order had assigned it. Same warning. The Egyptians named it as a violation of cosmic balance. Tradition 7. The Norse Eddic tradition. The Norse gods, Odin, Thor, Tyr, Freyr, Loki, are not moral beings in the Abrahamic sense. They drink, fight, lie, and break their own laws regularly. But there is one act in the Norse cosmology that even the gods cannot recover from: oath breaking, the breaking of a sworn word. The Eddas treat oath breakers as the single category of human or God that the cosmos cannot hold. The checkpoint will tell you what the Norse were pointing at. They were warning about the act of placing a small short-term gain in the seat that had been reserved for a sworn long-term commitment. The oath in Norse thought was not a religious act. It was an act of ordering the cosmos. To break it was to introduce chaos into the seat that order had taken. The cargo, a life that traded away the sworn commitment for a smaller convenient thing, and then watched the entire cosmos around the broken oath unravel. Same warning in the metallic shape of a Norse blade. Tradition 8. The Yoruba theological tradition of West Africa, with parallels across many West African religions. At the center of Yoruba thought is the concept of Ase, the divine power, the life force that flows through the cosmos and through every human being. The checkpoint will tell you what the Yoruba elders warned about with extraordinary consistency. They warned against the misuse of Ase, specifically the act of using divine power for the inflation of the small self, for personal status, for the domination of others, for the placement of one's own ego in a seat that should be held by community, ancestors, or the divine itself. The cargo, a life that took the cosmic energy granted to it and spent it on the elevation of the small self instead of the maintenance of the larger order. Same warning, different cosmology, same wrong occupant in the same seat. Tradition 9. The Aztec theology of central Mexico. The Aztec cosmology held that every human owed an existential debt to the gods who had created the present age, and that the maintenance of the cosmos depended on the regular repayment of that debt. The checkpoint will not defend the historical methods of repayment, which are well known and grim. The checkpoint will inspect the underlying warning, which is profound. The Aztecs were saying that the human tendency, given enough time and security, is to forget that the present moment is a borrowed gift, to start living as if one were the source of one's own life rather than the recipient of it. The cargo, a life lived as if it were owed nothing. A self that has installed itself in the seat that should be reserved for gratitude. Same warning. The seat is the same. The wrong occupant is the small self that has forgotten it is small. 9 traditions. Not even close to all of them. The checkpoint could continue. The Taoist Tao Te Ching in the 6th century BCE warned against the same move under the name of forced action. Wu Wei's opposite. The Confucian tradition warned against the failure to occupy one's correct station. Zhengming. Indigenous American traditions warned, almost universally, against the failure to honor reciprocity with the land. The medieval mystics, Christian, Islamic, Jewish, all named some version of the same failure under different mystical vocabularies. Here is the real issue. Every tradition, in every century, in every language, is warning about the same one move. The checkpoint will name it directly. The warning is this: there is one seat in every human life that must be left empty for the largest thing, whatever you call it. God, the cosmos, the way, the real, Mat, the ancestors, the principle of order, nothing. The seat must be left empty. And every theology in human history has been warning about the same failure. The human tendency to take a small thing, a partner, a possession, a status, an image, a fear, a substance, a system, a screen, and quietly install it in the seat that was supposed to be left empty for the largest thing. The Hebrew called it idolatry. The Muslim called it shirk. The Hindu called it avidya, mistaking the surface for the depth. The Buddhist called it tangha, grasping at the impermanent. The Greek called it hubris, the small self in the large seat. The Egyptian called it the heart heavier than the feather. The Norse called it oath-breaking, the small gain in the seat of the sworn word. The Yoruba called it the misuse of ashe. The Aztec called it the unpaid debt. Every tradition, the same warning, across continents, across millennia. There is a seat that must be left empty for the largest thing. Do not put a small thing in it. Now, the checkpoint turns the inspection on the modern viewer. The modern world has done something no previous civilization had the technology to do. It has built a perfect machine for installing small things in the seat that every tradition told you to leave empty. The machine is in your hand. The checkpoint will say this carefully. The phone is not the idol. The phone is the delivery mechanism for thousands of small idols every day before you have finished blinking. The first thing most adults do in the morning before their feet touch the floor is open a screen. The screen presents, in rapid sequence, hundreds of small candidates for the seat. The opinion of a stranger about a thing you do not know. The image of a person you will never meet. The emotion of an event you cannot influence. The number on a notification, the reaction to a comment, the headline, the score, the score, the score. Each one is a small candidate. Each one whispers, "Put me in the seat." The checkpoint will tell you what is happening in the language every tradition would recognize. By 8 a.m., the average modern person has installed and replaced 50 small idols in the seat that the Hebrew, the Muslim, the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Greek, the Egyptian, the Norse, the Yoruba, and the Aztec all want to leave empty. This is not a moral failure. This is an architectural one. The seat is being filled by software that was specifically engineered to fill it. And the part of you that every tradition was trying to protect, the part that needs the seat to be empty, is being slowly squeezed out by the volume of small candidates. That is why the modern person in 2026 is the most theologically warned against person in human history. I lived for years with the seat full of small things. Most of them I picked up before my feet touched the floor. I called it being informed. It was not being informed. It was the slow installation of 50 small idols in the place that was supposed to be left empty. The morning I left the phone in another room and let the seat sit empty for 10 minutes. For the first time in years, the silence was almost unbearable. I had not realized the seat had been full for so long that the sound of it being empty had become foreign. That was the morning the checkpoint started keeping a watch. Every tradition, one seat. Hebrew, leave it empty. Muslim, leave it empty. Hindu, see through what you would put in it. Buddhist, let go of what you would put in it. Greek, do not place yourself in it. Egyptian, do not let your heart grow heavier than the feather of what should sit in it. Norse, keep the oath that protects what should sit in it. Yoruba, do not spend the divine power on filling it with the small self. Aztec, remember that you are not the source of what should sit in it. Every tradition, the same one warning, with the same one practice underneath it. Leave the seat empty for the largest thing, regularly enough that the small things cannot move in. Here is the practice. Every tradition gave a version of it. The checkpoint will give you the simplest one. Once a day, the checkpoint suggests morning. Before the phone, sit for 10 minutes with the seat deliberately empty. No reading, no music, no audio, no journal, no prayer, even if prayer for you would be an act of installing something in the seat. No naming what should be there, just the empty seat. The mind will, in the first 3 minutes, attempt to install candidates. It will offer worry. It will offer plans. It will offer the news. It will offer the conversation from yesterday. It will offer the deadline today. Notice each candidate. Do not install it. The checkpoint has watched what happens to people who do this for 90 days. Almost everyone reports the same thing. The texture of the rest of their day quietly changes. Decisions get clearer. The urgency that was running everything turns out to have been small idols, taking up the seat, generating false weight. With the seat empty for 10 minutes a day, The small candidates stop being able to install themselves so easily during the rest of the day. This is what every tradition was prescribing under different names: Shabbat, Salat, Dhyana, Samadhi, Hezekiah, quietude, Wu Wei, the empty hour, different ritual, same architecture. Leave the seat empty regularly on purpose. That is the practice. The checkpoint has noticed that the seat is almost impossible to leave empty inside a phone whose other inputs are designed by software to install small candidates every few seconds. Drift inward is the small private room, the checkpoint built for exactly this kind of inspection. A place to sit with the seat empty for 10 minutes on a single quiet page where the small candidates have nowhere to install themselves. It is not a fix. It is a single empty seat on a device whose other seats are designed to never be empty. The ruling. Every god ever worshipped was warning you about the same one thing: leave the seat empty. The modern world has built a perfect machine for filling it with small idols before your feet touch the floor. 10 minutes a day with the seat deliberately empty is the practice every tradition prescribed under a different name. Start tomorrow morning, before the phone.